Yes, this room will suffice. Not too stuffy, not too sunny. A fine study it will make where I can quietly contemplate my court cases. And bask in marital bliss, of course. I do hope you haven't too big an appetite when it comes to matters of love. I myself am little so afflicted or indeed inclined. If the need takes you, don't hesitate to adopt a mistress. There's bound to be some service girls around here only too happy to delight the dragon with their coital talents. No, if something stirs my passion, it is the law above all else. Tomfoolery I leave to tomcats. Now then, to read through last week's transcripts. I'll see you later. Maybe we can have a spot of dinner together? Marriage is a happy occasion after all, and demands some sort of formal celebration. That is the custom, is it not? I'll see you later, I said, Commander. You do understand the phrase, don't you? My esteemed husband, I'm afraid I can't spare the time for the more frivolous facets of marriage, as I'm to preside over a court case very soon. Bit of a bizarre one, actually, but rather clear-cut. The gist of it is that a ship sank, and initially there were only 2 survivors. A dwarf and a lizard clung to some flotsam, but it too started to sink, so the dwarf kicked away his miserable companion, who quickly drowned. Self-defense thus pleads the dwarf. Cold-blooded murder thus protests the prosecution. I'm inclined to agree with the latter. Fellow's going to hang, and there's an end to it. There's no supposing about it, my dear draconic spouse. The accused is guilty, and the guilty must pay. In such beautiful simplicity, the very essence of justice lies condensed. Have you ever attended a hanging? Never a pleasant occasion, to be sure, but I insist on being there whenever the law forces me to commission its application. Keeps the heart cold and compels the mind to contemplate the consequences of these verdicts. Hardly has one dwarf left my courtroom heading for the hangman when another is brought forth. He's some high-ranking politician this time. Oh, it's nice to see you, by the way. Accused of raping a chambermaid. The man is a barbarian and has an ill reputation, but without more solid evidence than the girl's testimony, I can see no other option than to acquit him on all charges. It is during times as these that I lament the imperfections of justice. But if we deviate so much as a single step from the boundaries set by the law, anarchy and chaos start to claw at the very core of civilization. My path is clear. Well, maybe I should invite this politician over for a carefully orchestrated candlelight dinner and see if he makes his move. But no, that would be entrapment. Well, my dear husband, here's an interesting turn of events. Remember Desmond Sapphire Cave? The dwarfen diplomat and chronic maid molester. After I acquitted him, he sued that poor imp girl for slander and won. It is she who is now serving a year-long sentence in the salt mines of Carcaros, whereas he is enjoying a victory feast in the capital's most expensive restaurant as we speak. Oh, irony and tragedy sure make for happy bedfellows today, don't they? Quite. Same goes for any relationship. One wears the pants, the other the jetpack. Now, as for the imps, understandably they were a mite upset, going so far as to accuse me of bias. But I easily dismissed their misgivings. There was no evidence against Sapphire Cave, and that's that. I upheld the law, and thereby did my sacred duty. I haven't forgotten about the plight of that unfortunate imp chambermaid, in case you're wondering. If she practices good behavior, I can have her out of those miserable mines in less than a month's time. Sorry, I didn't notice you there. I'm catching up on my correspondence. This letter Yorick sent me makes for an interesting read. Seems the undead are formally accusing the dwarves of invading their sovereignty by means of a subtle but nefarious scheme. After opening banks in what was supposed to be a bid to stimulate local economy in undead provinces, dwarven bankers have been lending many undead enough money to buy land and houses, only to exponentially increase the interest rates afterwards. The unfortunate homeowners can no longer pay their mortgages, are evicted, and their lands and properties go to the bank. It would seem the dwarves have been playing this trick on a very large scale, effectively stripping the undead of large pieces of territory, hence the latter's claim of a breach of sovereignty. Yorick's plea is a simple one. He wants me to condemn this scheme as illegal. From the looks of it, though, it's all above board, if one negates the moral angle. I do love it when you're all pragmatism. Poor Yorick, he'll lose his very skull in down payment one day. Now, to delicately phrase, stuff it, you boring old bag of bones. Boy, those undead can get quite ticked off when they don't get what they want, can't they? Threaten to take up arms and slaughter every last dwarf in the realm. Still, whereas Yorick may have taken a shot at intimidation, I somehow found it difficult to take a screaming skeleton seriously. What's more, tiresomely pious though his kind may be, the undead proved to be as susceptible to the eminently secular seduction of silver and gold as their dwarven foes are. Miraculous how a few well-stocked purses in the right places seem to throw a whole new light on their economic situation. So I did, even though my word should have sufficed. The law is on the dwarf's side after all. Though I ultimately consider having had to resort to blackmail to be a failure, it did forestall more violence in an already troubled kingdom. And in the end, the law was upheld. What else matters? In case you're wondering, Falstaff did not cross my palm with silver. A sound slap on the cheek clarified my stance towards such sordid practices. Your latest conquest is giving me quite the headache, husband dear. You overrun realm after realm, not caring who has to vacate the local throne. Today it was a notorious elven dictator. So far so good, you might say, but the situation is more complicated than that. During the confusion that arose when your armies marched in, a group of guerrillas kidnapped a bunch of bigwigs' wives and children. They demand the release of their leader, one who opposed the rule of the toppled dictator. Alas, this fellow is hardly a saint. His means of opposition included murder, bombings, arson, and other pleasantries. He's hated and feared by the populace almost as much as the downfallen despot. His followers threaten to kill their hostages unless he is pardoned and set free post-haste. But doing so would invalidate our rule of never negotiating with those who wreak terror. His hands are as bloody as his rivals, as are his deeds. We are of the same mind. Justice would be ill-served by his exemption. I'll brief a squadron of rangers myself so they may be sent in as quickly as possible. May the shadows favor them. Mystifying creatures, those rangers. Elves, yes, but somehow they lack some of the most distinct elven qualities. Their desire to hunt and kill is uncanny, strong as that of demons. The fates do not merely rain on my parade, they cast down hail and lightning. What was to have been a flawless rescue operation underwent a miserable metamorphosis and resulted in a bloodbath. The seven be damned. More than half of the elven hostages were butchered before the last kidnapper was put down. It's my fault, so rings the cry. You should have given in to their demands, thus chanced the crowd. Civil unrest's afoot. The masses are marching upon the capital, bent on mayhem. Do none of them have any regard for the procedures we followed, the laws we obeyed? My thoughts exactly. The guard will be readied and words of warning spread. Let those who defy the law be cut down by the sword of justice. Let it come, the indignant crowd, with torches and pitchforks raised. Let it come, and collide as futilely with the law as waves crash upon cliffs, scorned and unheeded. My dear dragon, the law has triumphed. The protests against my person have been quenched. The forces of order didn't spare the rod, and those who defied them will be serving time in the mines as soon as their battered bones are healed. Not when she represents the writs of justice. They may be harsh, but always strike true. How I detest them all, the worms that crawled up from under wet earth at the scent of prey. But I was no corpse to be devoured. I look down upon them all those miscreants that would violate the sanctity of the law. They insult me personally when they slight the virtues of justice. But ever will I deal with them harshly and swiftly. They will live by the law or be struck down upon their breaking it. Please, I cannot spare the time. I have sentences to pass and punishments to organize. My esteemed husband, I find myself without a court case today, so do stay a while and listen, for I have some thoughts with you to share. I never told you about my youth, did I? Perhaps because I do not recall it very fondly. I was raised in the strictest of discipline, you see. Indeed, the minormost infraction was punished severely and judiciously. No small wonder such an upbringing led me to the law, the very measure of right and wrong. In the short time I have been aboard the Raven, I have had to preside over some of the most interesting cases of my career. And more often than not, it was proven that only by applying the very letter of the law, one can truly be an executor of justice. You have perceived this too, and supported my decisions in brave disregard of the unwarranted outrage they sometimes caused. If I am cold by nature, I am the more so by nurture. But to that effect, my fosterage could not have served me better. Thereby, I am not a mere dispenser of the law. No, I am the law. For standing by me, I thank you, Dragon. Truly, you have earned my respect. My love, though, I cannot say. For how can one give what one doesn't possess? We make for great companions, you and I. A strong king and a strong queen. Let that be enough. And if ever necessity calls for heirs, I'll just close my eyes and think of justice. But for now, you may leave me be. Your constant call for attention truly befuddles me. Perhaps we should get you a pet so I can enjoy a bit of peace and quiet. You catch me during one of my rare ill-tempered moods, dear husband. It's these damnable petitions for clemency, you see. Always the same. A man steals, and the next thing you know, clemency, please, he was starving. I'm sending him to a salt mine penal colony, aren't I? He'll be fed almost every day. Don't you get too close there, my dear spouse. I know how easily distracted you warm bloods get by physical proximity. I've a couple of arsonists to pass judgment over, and I'm about to peruse some ancient law texts in which I hope to find that only the stake will do to punish their fiery offenses. Got another clear-cut case before me, my dragon. Fellow murdered his neighbor in cold blood with a hand axe. Sure, this particular neighbor raped and killed this man's daughter the night before. But one cannot be allowed to take justice in one's own hands. Off to the gallows with him it is.